We try to fill the emptiness with something that is not lasting and something that is not perfect. And then we wonder why we end up with broken hearts. We end up disappointed. We end up so upset, so afraid, so insecure. It's clear why that happens. Because the thing that we are loving most is something that is not lasting, something that is not perfect. It's like a person who's rock climbing and they're holding onto a twig. What happens? The twig, if you hold onto a twig with all of your weight, what happens to the twig? It breaks. Then what happens to you? There's something called gravity. What happens to you? You fall. And we wonder why we end up falling, and we keep falling, and things keep breaking. It's because we're holding on to the wrong stuff. We are loving the wrong stuff, and we are neglecting the real thing. How do we find a balance? Because we live in dunya, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never told us that we should not love the creation. Allah did not say that you cannot love your children, your spouse, your money, you know, these nice halal things that you have. It's okay to love those things. How do we find a balance where those things are loved but they do not own us? How do we find a balance so that our greatest love, أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. You know, in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ. Say if your fathers, your sons, your spouses. Now here in this ayah, Allah lists about 8 things. And by the way, all of these things are halal. All of them are halal. Is it halal to love your parents? Is it halal to love your children? Is it halal to love your spouse? Is it halal to love your relatives? Is it halal to love your halal business or your home? However, Allah warns us of something in this ayah. He says that if any of these things are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause, then wait until Allah brings about His decision. And Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient ones. Now there's a message in this ayah that a lot of us don't realize. And that is that the things that distract us from God are not always necessarily the haram things. The clubbing, the drinking, the drugs, the alcohol. No, sometimes they are the halal things. Sometimes they are the halal things that we take and we love as we should only love Allah. And that's the secret that a lot of us didn't learn. We don't realize what's the problem. I'm a mother, I love my children. So what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that when I love my children and they overtake and they become my center instead of Allah, that's a problem. Even though of course it's halal to love my children. My spouse, when I take my spouse, it's not a boyfriend, it's not a girlfriend, I'm married, right? You take your spouse and you put them at the center of your existence, and your life starts to revolve around them, and what you think about most is them, and what you want to please most is them, and what you fear most is them, and all of a sudden, where is Allah in the equation? That's the problem. And this will happen with halal money, this will happen with your spouse, this will happen with your children, with your parents, with your business, with your house, which you delight in, the ayah says. But when those things you start to focus on and revolve your life around, that's when you have a problem.